The first explosion sounded like thunder. Emily Carter dropped a grocery bag she had been carrying as every window in her small rental house rattled at once. A second blast followed so quickly that the porch light flickered before the neighborhood fell into darkness. Across the street, someone screamed. Then another. Within seconds, flames climbed into the night sky only 3 houses away. Emily's heart stopped. Ethan, her 6-year-old son, had been asleep upstairs less than 5 minutes earlier. She sprinted toward the front door, but before she reached it, another explosion shattered the windows across the living room. Glass rained onto the hardwood floor as smoke rolled through the neighborhood like an approaching storm. Outside, people were running, some barefoot, some carrying children, others frozen in shock. Emily threw the front door open. The cold Seattle air hit her face, but it carried the unmistakable smell of gasoline. This wasn't an accident. Someone had set the neighborhood on fire. Then she saw him, her quiet next-door neighbor, the man who barely spoke, the man who always wore dark coats and kept his curtains closed, the man everyone assumed worked remotely because no one had ever seen him leave during the day. Tonight, he wasn't alone. More than a dozen black SUVs surrounded the street. Men dressed in tailored black suits stepped out with military precision, each carrying assault rifles beneath long coats. One by one, they lowered their heads toward the quiet neighbor. "Boss." Emily blinked. "Boss?" The stranger calmly surveyed the burning street, as if chaos belonged to him. His face remained unreadable. Not frightened, not surprised, merely calculating. Then his eyes met hers. For the first time since she'd moved next door 4 months earlier, she saw something beneath his quiet exterior. Recognition, and then fear. Not for himself, for her. He looked past Emily toward her house, toward the second-floor bedroom. His expression changed instantly. "Where's the boy?" The question hit her before she understood why he knew she had a son upstairs. Emily stared at him. "My son." The second floor exploded. The blast threw her backward across the lawn. Heat swallowed the front of the house as fire burst through Ethan's bedroom windows. Emily screamed so loudly she couldn't hear herself. "Ethan." She tried to run toward the burning doorway. Strong hands caught her before she reached it. "No." She fought wildly. "Me baby." The stranger released her only after turning to his armed men. "Cover every exit." His voice was low, calm, absolute. "If anyone gets within 50 feet of this house." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Every armed man immediately spread through the street. Without another word, the quiet neighbor walked directly into the burning house, into the flames, into certain death. Emily collapsed to her knees. No one could survive that. No one. 4 months earlier, Emily had believed moving to Seattle would erase her past. It hadn't. The bruises disappeared. The nightmares didn't. Her divorce had been final for only 8 months, when she packed everything she owned into an aging SUV and drove north with Ethan asleep in the back seat. She wasn't chasing happiness anymore. She was chasing peace. The small neighborhood near Green Lake had seemed perfect. Tree-lined streets, children riding bicycles, neighbors who smiled without asking questions. It felt like the first safe place she'd known in years. Except for one house. The one next door. Unlike everyone else, its owner never attended neighborhood barbecues, never collected packages during daylight, never spoke longer than necessary. Delivery trucks arrived almost every evening. Expensive black cars came and went after midnight. Security cameras watched every angle of the property. Emily assumed he was another wealthy tech executive protecting his privacy. Seattle had plenty of them. Still, something about him felt different. Not dangerous. Lonely. She first met him on a rainy Tuesday morning. The wooden fence separating their properties had collapsed after a windstorm. Emily struggled to lift one of the heavy panels, while Ethan chased puddles nearby. Without warning, Another pair of hands steadied the broken wood. "I've got it." She looked up. The neighbor, tall, broad shoulders beneath a charcoal coat, dark hair damp from the rain. His face carried the kind of quiet composure that made people instinctively lower their voices around him. "Thank you," Emily said. He simply nodded. Together, they lifted the fence back into place. "You just moved in." It wasn't a question. Emily smiled politely. "About 2 weeks ago." He glanced toward Ethan. The little boy splashed through another puddle while laughing at something only children could find funny. A flicker crossed the stranger's eyes. It disappeared almost immediately. "Your son shouldn't play near the street." Emily frowned. "There aren't many cars here." "There will be." His answer was strangely firm. Before she could ask what he meant, he picked up his toolbox and walked away. No goodbye. No introduction. Just silence. Emily watched him disappear behind the gate. Weird, but harmless. Or so she thought. Life slowly found its rhythm. Emily worked remotely as a children's book editor while Ethan started first grade. Bills remained tight. The house leaked every time it rained. The heater made unsettling noises after midnight. But for the first time in years, no one shouted. No one broke dishes. No one made her afraid to fall asleep. Sometimes she noticed the neighbor outside before sunrise. Always alone. Always drinking coffee. Always watching the street instead of the sunrise. It was almost as though he expected something terrible to happen every morning. Late one October evening, Emily's phone rang. Ethan couldn't breathe. The fever that had started hours earlier suddenly became something far worse. His tiny chest struggled with every breath. Emily grabbed her keys. The old SUV refused to start. Again, no. She tried the ignition repeatedly. Nothing. Panic tightened around her throat. The nearest hospital was 15 minutes away. She looked around desperately. Every house was dark, except one. The neighbor's porch light switched on, as though he'd already known. He stepped outside before she reached his driveway. "What's wrong?" "My son." She couldn't finish. The stranger glanced once toward the upstairs bedroom, then back at her. "I'll drive." No hesitation. No unnecessary questions. A black luxury SUV rolled out from his garage. Emily had never seen it before. Within seconds, they were speeding through Seattle's rain-soaked streets. He ignored every red light, every speed limit. Traffic somehow moved aside before they reached it, almost as if people had been instructed to clear the road. Emily barely noticed. She sat in the back seat, holding Ethan against her chest. "Please stay with me." The little boy barely opened his eyes. The stranger looked once into the rearview mirror. He'll be fine. His certainty sounded impossible. Yet somehow, Emily believed him. The emergency room doors burst open before they even parked. Doctors were already waiting. Emily frowned. How could they know? She hadn't called ahead. As nurses rushed Ethan away, she turned toward the stranger. "Thank you." He simply nodded. "Stay with your son. You don't have to leave." He hesitated. For the first time, she saw uncertainty. "I should. At least tell me your name." Silence lingered between them. Then, "Luca. Just Luca. Nothing more." Emily smiled. "I'm Emily." "I know." The words slipped out before he could stop them. Emily blinked. "You know?" Luca looked away. "I've seen the mailbox." It made sense, didn't it? Still, something about the answer felt rehearsed. Before she could ask anything else, he was already walking toward the exit. Outside the hospital entrance, a black sedan waited with its engine running. The driver opened the rear door without speaking. Luca climbed inside. The car disappeared into the rain. 2 floors above the emergency department, a surgeon removed his gloves. The child's condition stabilized faster than expected. Another doctor looked confused. How did someone authorize a private pediatric team this quickly? The surgeon shrugged. It was already paid for. By who? He glanced toward the hospital administrator standing near the window. She quietly answered, "The man who brought them." Emily didn't learn about that payment until weeks later. She also never learned why every hospital bill had mysteriously disappeared before arriving in her mailbox. When she called billing, there was no record of any balance. Someone had erased it. Winter arrived early. Heavy snow covered the neighborhood in silence. Emily opened her front door one morning, expecting another hour of shoveling. Instead, her driveway was already clear. So was the sidewalk. So were Ethan's tiny footprints leading safely toward the school bus stop. She looked around. No one, only one set of boot prints, disappeared toward the neighboring house. That evening, she knocked on Luca's door carrying homemade lasagna. It took nearly a minute before he answered. He looked genuinely surprised to see her. "I think this belongs to you." She held up the casserole dish. "You cleared our driveway. You needed to get to work. You did it before sunrise." "It snowed before sunrise." Emily laughed. Most people would accept a thank you. A ghost of a smile almost reached his lips. "Almost. I don't usually eat dinner with people. I wasn't inviting you." She smiled teasingly. "I'm bribing you into accepting leftovers." He looked at the steaming dish, then at her. Finally, he accepted it. Their fingers brushed for less than a second. Emily noticed how cold his hands were despite standing inside a warm house. Luca noticed she didn't pull away immediately. Neither of them spoke. Some silences were louder than conversation. Behind Luca, Emily caught a glimpse inside the house. Minimal furniture. No family photographs. Not television. Only shelves filled with books, and one enormous oil painting of a storm over the ocean. The home felt less like a place someone lived, and more like somewhere someone hid. Before she could look longer, Luca gently closed the door. That night, Emily stood at her bedroom window, watching snow drift across the quiet street. A light remained on inside Luca's study. It was nearly 2 a.m. He still hadn't gone to bed. She wondered what kind of man chose loneliness every single day. Across the street, Luca stood in the darkness behind his own window, watching her house, not with obsession, not yet, with vigilance. Every camera surrounding the neighborhood fed directly into the hidden security room beneath his home. Every unfamiliar license plate was logged, every stranger photographed, every potential threat investigated. His men thought he was protecting a safe house. None of them knew the truth. The woman next door had never been part of his mission. But somewhere between repairing a broken fence, driving her terrified son through the rain, and watching a little boy wave to him every morning, she had quietly become the one variable he could no longer ignore. And in Luca DeSantis's world, the moment someone became important, they also became a target. The fire consumed 3 houses before sunrise. By the time firefighters finally brought the flames under control, television crews had already flooded the neighborhood. Emily sat in the back of an ambulance with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, her hands trembling as paramedics checked the burn on her wrist. Her eyes never left Ethan. He slept inside another ambulance, breathing steadily through an oxygen mask. Alive. That single word echoed through her mind, again and again. Alive. A paramedic smiled reassuringly. "He's going to be okay." Emily nodded, but her attention drifted to the crowd gathered behind the police barricades. Black SUVs lined the street. Men, in dark suits, stood shoulder to shoulder, ignoring the flashing lights. They weren't watching the fire. They were watching one man, Luca. His white dress shirt was stained with soot and blood, where a burning beam had torn across his shoulder. A doctor tried to examine him. Luca simply walked away. Nobody stopped him. Not the doctor, not the firefighters, not even the police officers. People stepped aside as though they instinctively understood he wasn't someone to question. Emily watched him disappear behind one of the SUVs. For a moment, she wondered if she had imagined everything. The armed men, the word boss, the impossible authority that surrounded him. But she hadn't. Every second of it had been real. 3 days later, Emily unlocked the door to the temporary apartment provided by the city. The smell of fresh paint couldn't hide the emptiness. Nearly everything she owned had been destroyed. Family photographs, Ethan's drawings, his favorite dinosaur blanket, Gone. She carefully placed the only surviving photo frame onto the kitchen counter, a picture of Ethan smiling at the beach. Someone knocked, gently. She opened the door. Luca stood outside holding 2 grocery bags. Neither of them spoke immediately. "I heard you hadn't gone shopping." Emily looked at the bags. "You've been keeping track of me?" His expression barely changed. "I asked someone." She folded her arms. "Someone?" "A neighbor." She almost laughed. "You don't exactly seem like the kind of man who chats with neighbors." For the first time, something resembling embarrassment crossed his face. "I make exceptions." Emily stepped aside. "You can come in." He hesitated, almost as though entering her temporary home felt more dangerous than walking into a burning building. Finally, he stepped inside. The apartment suddenly felt much smaller. Luca quietly unpacked groceries onto the counter. Fresh fruit, milk, medicine, children's cereal, even Ethan's favorite apple juice. Emily frowned. "How did you know he drinks this?" Luca stopped moving. Silence filled the kitchen. Then he answered quietly, "I've seen him carrying it home." She studied him carefully. "You notice a lot." "I notice what's around me." His answer sounded professional, not personnel, yet something about it unsettled her. That evening, Ethan finally woke. His voice remained hoarse from the smoke. "Mom?" Emily immediately sat beside him. "I'm here." He looked around the unfamiliar apartment. "Where's our house?" Emily gently brushed his hair back. "We're staying somewhere else for a while." He nodded slowly. "Then, where's Mr. Luca?" Emily blinked. "You remember him?" "He carried me." A small smile appeared. "He smelled like smoke." Emily swallowed. "You remember that?" "He told me not to look back." Her heart tightened. "What else did he say?" Ethan frowned. "I don't remember." He looked confused. There were loud noises. His breathing became faster. There were men yelling. Emily quickly hugged him. "It's okay. You don't have to think about it." But Ethan kept staring at the ceiling. There was another fire. Emily froze. "What?" He whispered so softly she barely heard him. "I saw fire before. Across the city, inside an abandoned warehouse, overlooking Elliott Bay. Luca sat alone at a long wooden table. Maps covered the walls. Security monitors displayed streets throughout Seattle. Marco, his oldest lieutenant, entered quietly. The police ruled it an electrical fire. Luca didn't answer. Marco placed several photographs onto the table. Gasoline residue, military detonators, professional burn patterns. It wasn't random. "No. They found your house?" "They found her." Marco sighed heavily. "You've hidden from Moretti for 3 years." Luca finally looked up. "He wasn't looking for me." Silence settled over the room. Marco already knew the answer. He was looking for the boy. Luca leaned back. His normally unreadable face hardened. "They know Ethan survived." "How?" "I don't know." Marco lowered his voice. "Then we move." "I already did." "You moved the operation?" Luca slowly shook his head. "I moved her." The next morning, Emily noticed it immediately. The blue sedan, parked across the street. It hadn't been there yesterday. The driver never got out, never looked at his phone, never read a newspaper. He simply watched the apartment building. She told herself she was imagining things, until the sedan appeared again that afternoon, and again after sunset. By the 3rd day, she stopped believing in coincidences. That night, she knocked on Luca's temporary apartment. He opened the door almost instantly, as though he'd been expecting her. "Someone's following me." "I know." Emily stared. "You know?" "I've been watching them." Her stomach tightened. "Who are they?" "I don't know yet." You don't know? I know enough. What does that mean? It means you shouldn't leave alone. Emily took a step back. You've been watching me, too. Luca remained silent. The silence answered her question. You've been watching my apartment. Yes. My work? Yes. My son's school? Yes. Anger flashed across her face. You had no right. I know. Then why? His jaw tightened. Because someone else already was. The room became painfully quiet. Emily searched his eyes. You knew before I did. Yes? And you didn't tell me? You would have panicked. I have every reason to panic now. She turned toward the door. I'm calling the police. Luca's voice remained calm. They already know. She stopped walking. What? They can't protect you. How could you possibly know that? Because someone inside the department is feeding information to the people following you. Emily slowly turned back. Who are you? He looked directly into her eyes. The question lingered between them. For several long seconds, neither of them moved. Finally, he answered, I'm someone trying to keep your son alive. Not who. Someone. Emily noticed the choice of words. The following afternoon, Ethan asked if they could visit the park. Emily hesitated. The surveillance sedan hadn't returned. Maybe everything really was over. Against her instincts. She agreed. Children laughed beneath gray Seattle skies. Parents pushed swings. Dogs chased tennis balls across wet grass. For the first time since the fire, everything felt almost normal. Then Ethan stopped running. He stared toward a man selling balloons. His smile disappeared. His little face turned pale. Mom. Emily knelt beside him. What's wrong? The man. What about him? I've seen him. Where? Ethan grabbed her hand so tightly it hurt. He was there. There. Where? The fire. Emily looked toward the balloon vendor. The man smiled politely at another child. Perfectly ordinary. Then, he slowly touched the brim of his cap. A tiny gesture. Across the street, another man repeated it. Then another. Emily's heartbeat exploded. They weren't strangers. They were signaling each other. Her phone vibrated. Unknown number. She answered. Emily. Luca's voice. Don't react. Fear rushed through her. Where are you? I can see you. She looked around frantically. I don't see you. You don't need to. His voice stayed impossibly steady. Take Ethan. Walk toward the fountain. Do not run. Emily obeyed. Every instinct screamed at her to sprint. Instead, she walked. The balloon vendor casually began following. Another man closed in from the opposite path. People around them continued enjoying their afternoon. No one realized what was happening. Luca spoke again. When I say now, a long pause. Run. Before the word had fully left his mouth, a black SUV crashed through the park entrance. Children screamed. Parents scattered. The balloon vendor reached inside his jacket. Gunfire erupted. Luca appeared seemingly from nowhere. He slammed into the gunman before the weapon cleared its holster. The impact drove both men through a park bench. Emily grabbed Ethan and ran. More black vehicles surrounded the park. Men in tactical gear poured out. Not police. Luca's people. The shootout lasted less than 30 seconds. Terrifying. Precise. Professional. When it ended, the attackers were gone. Either captured or dead. Luca walked toward Emily. Blood ran down his forehead. Not his own. He stopped, only inches away. Are you hurt? She couldn't answer. She looked at the bodies being loaded into unmarked vehicles, then back at him. This is your world. He didn't deny it. My son almost died. I know. They were trying to kill him. They were trying to take him. Emily's breathing became uneven. Why? Luca looked toward Ethan. The little boy stood frozen, staring at the abandoned balloons drifting into the cloudy sky. Because he remembers something. Emily whispered. What? Luca met her eyes. I've spent 3 years making sure nobody found him. Her voice shook. "You knew about Ethan before we ever met." Another silence, this one heavier than all the others. "I knew someone was hiding a child connected to an old murder." Emily's expression hardened. "You lied to me. I omitted the truth. You moved next door because of us." "Yes, everything." She struggled to breathe. The fence, the hospital, the snow, the groceries. Were they all part of your job? Luca looked at her for a very long time. Then he answered with painful honesty. "They started that way." Emily felt tears burning behind her eyes. And now, for the first time, the most feared man she had ever met couldn't find an answer, because the truth frightened him more than any bullet. Somewhere along the way, protecting Emily Carter had stopped being a mission. It had become the only decision he no longer questioned, and that terrified him. More than Victor Moretti, more than war, more than death itself, because every person Luca DeSantis had ever loved had been taken from him. He wasn't sure he could survive losing one more. As dusk settled over Seattle, another pair of unseen eyes watched the park through the lens of a long-range camera. A photograph slowly developed inside a portable printer. Emily, Ethan, Luca, standing together. The man slipped the photo into an envelope addressed to only one name: Victor Moretti. The message inside contained a single sentence. "The witness remembers. Night fell over Seattle beneath a curtain of relentless rain." Emily couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Ethan standing in the park, while strangers silently surrounded him. Every answer Luca had given only created 10 new questions. He had moved in next door because of Ethan. He had watched them, protected them, lied to them, and somehow she still couldn't convince herself to hate him. A soft knock broke the silence. Emily immediately reached for the kitchen knife she had hidden beneath a towel. "Who is it?" "It's me, Luca." She hesitated before unlocking the door. He stood alone, wearing a dark coat damp with rain. The fresh cut across his forehead had already been stitched, though dried blood still stained his collar. His expression remained unreadable. "I need you to pack." Emily didn't move. "I'm not going anywhere." "You don't have a choice. I've spent my entire life listening to men tell me what I don't have a choice about." For the first time, Luca looked away. "I know. You don't know anything." His voice became quieter. "I know your ex-husband broke your ribs." Emily froze. "I know you slept in your car for 2 nights before finding the shelter in Portland." Silence. "I know you changed Ethan's last name before moving here." She stared at him. "How?" "I had to know who you were before I could keep you alive." "You investigated me." "Yes. You invaded my life." "I did." She wanted to slam the door. She wanted to scream. Instead, she asked the question that frightened her most. "Have you ever lied about protecting my son?" Luca answered immediately. "No." There wasn't the slightest hesitation. Emily had learned enough about him to recognize the difference between truth and evasion. This time, he was telling the truth. Before either of them spoke again, Ethan appeared in the hallway, rubbing his sleepy eyes. "Mr. Luca?" Luca's entire posture softened almost imperceptibly. "Hey, buddy." Ethan walked straight toward him. "You got hurt. It looks worse than it is." The little boy disappeared into his bedroom and returned carrying a box of cartoon bandages. "My teacher says dinosaurs make people feel better." Emily expected Luca to smile politely. Instead, the feared man who had walked through fire knelt to Ethan's height without saying a word. Tiny hands carefully placed a green dinosaur bandage across the edge of Luca's stitched wound. "There, so the monsters stay away." Luca swallowed hard. "Thank you." Emily watched the scene in silence. No one had ever looked at Luca the way Ethan did. Not with fear, not with admiration, just uncomplicated trust. For a brief moment, Luca almost forgot who he was. Then Marco's phone call shattered the silence. Luca answered immediately. What happened? Marco's voice was unusually tense. We lost one of the surveillance teams. Where? North Harbor. How many? 3. Luca closed his eyes. Moretti? Marco didn't answer. He didn't need to. Luca slipped the phone back into his pocket. We leave in 10 minutes. Less than half an hour later, 2 black SUVs disappeared into the rain. Emily sat beside Ethan in the back seat. Luca drove himself. She noticed he checked every mirror every few seconds, not nervously, methodically, like a man who had survived, because he assumed danger was always behind him. Seattle slowly disappeared. The highway gave way to winding forest roads. After nearly 2 hours, the convoy stopped before what looked like an abandoned lighthouse overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Emily frowned. This is the safe house? It used to be a Coast Guard station. Now it overlooked crashing waves and jagged cliffs. The isolation was unsettling. The ocean swallowed every sound except the wind. Inside, however, the building was nothing like she expected. Warm lighting, bookshelves, a stone fireplace, fresh food, children's games stacked neatly in one corner. Emily looked at Luca. You planned for families. He looked toward the fire. I planned for possibilities. The first night passed without incident. The second, Ethan, had a nightmare. Emily woke to hear him crying. By the time she reached his room, Luca was already there, standing awkwardly in the doorway. He hadn't entered. He simply waited, unsure whether he should. Emily knelt beside Ethan. What happened? The little boy buried his face against her shoulder. There were flames. I know. There was a man. Emily exchanged a glance with Luca. What man? Ethan's breathing became uneven. He smiled. What did he look like? The child squeezed his eyes shut. He hut. His voice cracked. A silver ring. Luca's expression changed instantly. Marco noticed it too. The ring? Luca nodded once. The falcon ring. Only Victor Moretti's inner circle wore it. It was the first real memory Ethan had recovered. And if Ethan remembered one detail, more memories would follow, which meant Victor would never stop hunting him. The following morning brought an unexpected calm. Emily found Luca sitting outside on the lighthouse steps, watching the ocean. For once, no guards stood nearby. She sat beside him without speaking. The waves crashed against the cliffs below. Finally, she asked, "Do you ever stop looking over your shoulder?" "No." "Even here?" "No." "You really believe he'll find us?" "He always finds people." Emily studied him carefully. "What about you? What about me? Who were you before all this?" For several seconds, he simply watched the horizon. I had a younger brother. It was the first personal thing he had ever volunteered. He wanted to become an architect. What happened? He trusted the wrong people. Luca's voice remained steady. They killed him. I'm sorry. So was I. Silence settled again. Then Emily quietly asked, "Is revenge the only reason you're still alive?" Luca didn't answer immediately. For the first time in years, he honestly wasn't sure. That afternoon, Ethan wandered into the old lighthouse tower. He discovered a dusty wooden chest filled with postcards from travelers decades earlier. Among them was a box of colored pencils. Emily smiled as he began drawing. Luca watched from across the room. What is he making? Ethan proudly held up the paper. 3 stick figures. 1 tall, 1 woman, 1 little boy. Above them, a lighthouse. Emily laughed softly. You forgot yourself. Ethan looked confused. I didn't. He pointed toward the tallest figure. That's Mr. Luca. Luca stared at the drawing longer than anyone expected. No one had included him in a family picture since his brother died. He quietly folded the drawing and slipped it into the inside pocket of his coat. He never told Ethan. It became the single most valuable thing he owned, hundreds of miles away. Victor Moretti examined surveillance photographs spread across a marble table. Emily, Ethan, the lighthouse. He smiled. So, the child is remembering One of his captains nodded. Our people confirmed the safe house. Victor slowly rotated the silver falcon ring on his finger. Prepare, everyone. Do you want the woman alive? Victor considered the question. For now. And the boy? Victor's expression hardened. No witnesses. Back at the lighthouse, a storm rolled in shortly before sunset. Wind rattled every window. Marco hurried inside, carrying binoculars. Luca. What? Boat. Luca immediately stepped outside, far below the cliffs. A fishing vessel drifted without lights. Too close. Too still. His instincts screamed. Get Emily and Ethan underground. Marco didn't argue. Emily saw the change in Luca's face before anyone explained. What is it? We have visitors. Gunfire erupted. Before he finished speaking, the first sniper round shattered the lighthouse windows. Glass exploded across the room. Luca instinctively shoved Emily behind the stone fireplace. Another shot struck the wall exactly where she had been standing. Move. He grabbed Ethan into his arms and ran toward the reinforced staircase leading below ground. Emily followed close behind. The lighthouse shook as explosions echoed outside. Moretti's men had arrived. Inside the underground bunker, emergency lights cast everything in deep crimson. The air felt colder, the walls narrower. Emily's breathing became uneven. This place, it was built for sieges. Luca locked the steel door. The impact of another explosion echoed through the concrete. Marco checked surveillance monitors. They're inside the lighthouse. How many? More than 30. Emily looked at Luca. Can they get in here? He answered honestly. Eventually. Silence swallowed the room. Ethan quietly reached for Emily's hand. She squeezed it tightly. Luca noticed. Something shifted inside him. He had spent years protecting witnesses because it served a purpose. Now, the fear tightening around his chest had nothing to do with missions. It had everything to do with one woman and one little boy. For the first time since his brother's death, he had something left to lose, and Victor Moretti had just found it. Outside, footsteps echoed above the bunker ceiling. Then came a familiar voice through the security speaker. Calm, confident, cruel. Luca. Victor's voice rolled through the concrete like distant thunder. You've hidden from me long enough. Emily looked toward Luca. His face remained perfectly still. But his eyes, for the first time, she saw something she never thought possible. Not fear for himself. Fear that he might fail to protect the only family he never expected to care about. The steel door shuddered under another massive blast. The locks groaned. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Victor spoke again, almost amused. You can save the woman, or you can save the boy. You already know you don't have enough time for both. The bunker fell silent, and for the first time, Luca had no idea whether Victor was bluffing. The bunker shook again. A third explosion sent dust raining from the concrete ceiling. Marco checked the security monitor, then looked at Luca. They've breached the first door. Luca's eyes never left Emily and Ethan. Victor's voice echoed through the speaker once more. You've always been willing to sacrifice soldiers. A pause, but not them. Emily stepped closer to Luca. Tell me the truth. He met her eyes. The tunnel behind this bunker leads to the cliffs. You and Ethan can make it to the coast. And you? I'll slow them down. Emily shook her head immediately. No, you don't get to decide that. His expression remained calm. I already have. She grabbed his arm before he could walk away. You promised to keep my son alive. I will. You never promised you'd stay alive. For the first time since they had met, the silence between them wasn't built on secrets. It was built on everything neither of them knew how to say. Luca slowly reached into his coat. He unfolded the crayon drawing Ethan had given him only hours before. 3 stick figures beneath a lighthouse. He looked at it for a long moment, then carefully placed it back inside his jacket. I've buried too many people. His voice was barely above a whisper. I'm not burying either of you. Before Emily could answer, another explosion ripped through the bunker. Steele screamed. Marco turned. "They're coming!" Luca drew a handgun. Then another. He looked at Marco. "Get them to the tunnel. What about you? I'm ending this." The reinforced door burst inward. Smoke flooded the corridor. Armed men rushed through the opening. Luca met them head-on. Every movement was controlled. Precisi. He wasn't fighting for territory. He wasn't fighting for power. He was fighting for time. Behind him, Emily ran with Ethan through the narrow tunnel carved into the cliffs decades earlier. The sound of gunfire echoed behind them. Each shot made Ethan flinch. Emily wanted to look back. She forced herself not to. Halfway through the tunnel, the lights suddenly went dark. A flashlight beam appeared ahead. 3 armed men blocked the exit. Victor Moretti had planned for the escape route. Emily instinctively stepped in front of Ethan. One of the gunmen smiled. "It's over." A single gunshot cracked through the tunnel. Then another. The man in front collapsed. Luca emerged from the darkness, bleeding from his shoulder, breathing heavily. He had fought his way through another passage to reach them first. Behind me, Emily didn't argue. The remaining attackers opened fire. Concrete splintered. The narrow tunnel became chaos. Luca pushed Emily and Ethan behind a rock wall just as another bullet struck his side. He staggered, but he didn't fall. Victor stepped into the tunnel himself. Elegant suite, silver, falcon ring, calm smile. "So many lives," Victor said softly. "For one child." Luca answered with equal calm. "One innocent life is worth more than everything you've built." Victor laughed. "You've changed." "No." Luca raised his weapon. "I finally remembered who I wanted to be." Victor reached for his own gun. At that exact moment, Ethan looked up. His face turned pale. "I remember." Everyone froze. The little boy pointed directly at Victor. "He was there. He hurt the man who was protecting me." And Ethan's voice trembled. He started the fire. Victor's smile disappeared. He realized the memories had returned. He raised his weapon toward Ethan. Emily instinctively threw herself in front of her son. Before Victor could fire, Luca tackled him. The 2 men crashed through the weakened tunnel wall. Both disappeared onto the rain-soaked cliffs overlooking the Pacific. Emily screamed. "Luca!" She reached the edge just in time to see the 2 men struggling dangerously close to the collapsing rocks. Victor lunged for his fallen pistol. Luca kicked it over the cliff. The weapon disappeared into the crashing waves below. Victor pulled a knife. "You should have stayed a ghost." Luca looked toward Emily and Ethan one last time. His expression softened. Then he faced Victor again. "No. I finally found something worth living for." Victor attacked. The struggle lasted only seconds. The unstable cliff gave way beneath Victor's feet. He slipped. His hand grabbed Luca's wrist. For a brief moment, Luca could have pulled him to safety. Instead, he looked into Victor's eyes. "It's over." He released his grip. Victor disappeared into the darkness below. Only the sound of crashing waves remained. Weeks later, federal investigators uncovered years of financial records, hidden properties, and evidence linking Victor's organization to dozens of murders. Without its leader, the criminal network collapsed. Several corrupt officials were arrested. Witnesses finally came forward. For the first time in years, Ethan no longer had to hide. Spring arrived in Seattle. Emily and Ethan moved into a small house overlooking a quiet lake. No security cameras, no black SUVs, no armed guards. Just birdsong and sunlight filtering through the trees. One afternoon, Ethan looked out the window. "Mom? Yeah? Do you think Mr. Luca likes pancakes?" Emily smiled. "I think he'd pretend he doesn't." A familiar pickup truck stopped outside. Not an armored convoy. Not a luxury sedan. Just a dusty truck. Luca stepped out wearing jeans and a plain jacket. The bandage on his shoulder was gone. The scars remained. He walked toward the porch carrying a small cardboard box. Emily opened the door before he knocked. Neither of them spoke immediately. He handed her the box. Inside were the family photographs recovered from the fire. Restored, cleaned, every single one. I thought they were destroyed. So did I. She looked up at him. You kept searching. I said I'd protect what mattered. Emily closed the box. You know, you don't have to stand outside anymore. He looked at her, uncertain for perhaps the first time in his life. She stepped aside. Come in. Luca hesitated only a moment before crossing the threshold, not as the feared man everyone once called boss, but as a man finally choosing a different future. Ethan ran into the room holding another drawing. This one's bigger. 3 figures stood beneath a bright blue sky. No flames, no guns, no fear, just home. Luca looked at the drawing, then at Emily. She smiled, not because the past had disappeared, but because, together, they had survived it. Sometimes, the bravest thing a person can do isn't winning a war. It's believing life can still begin after one. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, let us know in the comments. What would you have done in Emily's place? Trusted the mysterious man next door, or walked away the moment you learned his secret? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more cinematic stories filled with mystery, sacrifice, and unforgettable characters. Your next story is only one click away.